In today's video I want to talk to you about compositions and why compositions are so difficult. I'm doing this because compositions don't have to be that difficult, but if you do a poll on my channel or look anywhere online, the thing that people seem to struggle with most in photography is finding compositions and how to apply all those rules. In my opinion, rules and photography, they just don't go together. Photography is something creative, and if something is creative, you can't have rules. Those things don't go together. Creativity and rules, those are two completely separate things. So I think you have to see the rules more as like guidelines, and I will show you that those rules that people talk about don't apply to every image. You have the rule of thirds, rule of matching colors. You have to have leading lines, foreground, midground, background. All these rules, there are certain images that just don't apply to those rules. And if you go and think only about that your image has to apply to certain rules, then you will struggle to find compositions. But there's so much more to it than those rules. So from now on, just see them as guidelines, but if they don't apply, you can still make nice images. So I have a lot of examples here to show you what I mean with this, and which will also show you that those rules don't apply all the time, but still you can have great images while breaking those rules. So let's get into this video and I will show you what I'm talking about. So the first image that I've selected is of a little series that I'm going to show you about leading lines. A very obvious technique to find a composition. So in this case you can see this path through the grass, and the subject is in the first case the house, but because your eye leads over this path, it just sees this rabbit here in the middle of the frame, and which is also a subject, and it just works because of this path. If this rabbit was sitting in an open field, you wouldn't have noticed it that easy, but because it's on the path, it's much easier. In this case also, there are actually a couple of things going on here. You have the leading line of this road going to the back here, then there's a leading line of this green field going to the back, and then there's this row of windmills going to the back. So everything in this image is pointing towards that sun. Did I apply the rule of thirds? Yes, you can say so. You have 1/3 sky and 2/3 of land here in the foreground, but that's about all that you can say about it. But it's much more about the leading lines. Where do you want your viewer to go? And in this case, you know that the human eye is always attracted by the brightest part in the image. So you just know that your eye is going towards that sun. So why not use all these lines to lead your eye to that position? So it's always a nice thing to keep in mind, where is the eye going to be first? And then look, how can I make sure that it is going there? So this is another really obvious one. Of course, S-curves, always a great subject in an image. So S-curves, if you see them, go look at it. It's always nice because it transforms a flat two-dimensional image into a three-dimensional image. You can see depth very easy with S-curves. So if you see them, keep it in mind. Here another example of an S-curve. It just works. You get this sense of depth in the image, which always transforms that flat two-dimensional into three-dimensional. In this case, the leading line is this path, but there wasn't really a subject in this image. You have trees, you have beautiful light, you have this path running into the background, but there was nothing here. So I decided to stand over here, and I had a brown jacket on, which perfectly suited this image, because I wanted to be in the image, but I don't want it to be the image. If I would have had a bright orange jacket on, which I always also have as a winter's jacket, the only thing that would interest me was me. But because I have the same colors of this image, it's just I'm going into the image, if you know what I mean. It's not about me, it's about the atmosphere in this forest. And that's always something to keep in mind when you put yourself in an image. The same thing for this one. It's all about this beautiful golden light coming from the side, but yeah, this path pulls your eye to the other side. So it's still a really nice image, but if you look at it, it's totally wrong because the path is running in the wrong direction. If the path would have gone to this side, it would have been better because your eye is going to the left side because it's the brightest part of the image. But still, you can see that the image just still works. And why is that? That has everything to do with a certain atmosphere. You know, this image breathes a certain calmness or atmosphere or whatever it is. But because of that, the image still works even though the leading line is not going in the right direction. And it's the same thing more or less in this image. You have this beautiful path acting as a leading line in this image, but the leading line isn't going to this beautiful golden top of the frame, it's going out of the frame on the side. But it doesn't really matter. It's still a really nice image, although that leading line isn't going over here. Would it have been better? It could have been better if this path would have gone to this side, but in this case, in my opinion, it just doesn't matter because the atmosphere is right in this particular image. And you can see that in this image, it's actually the same location, but this is taken a couple of weeks ago. The other one is about 2 years old. You can see that I've made it like a panorama, and I tried to learn from that first mistake. So I first cut off the path over here, and right now I've used this path, and now it's leading your eye back towards where the sun is. So I used the technique again, and maybe a little bit better than in the last image. And would it have mattered if you cut out? I could have cut the image out like this and made it a 2x3. It would have still been a nice image. But yeah, so there are more possibilities to go. You can cut it off. You can use it. There are always different possibilities, which don't particularly mean that one image is bad and one image is better. This also, the leading line is the path running to the back with some beautiful light, but it doesn't have a subject. So that's why I stood in this position myself. And because the colors are matching the surroundings, natural colors, brown, it just works. If I would have worn my orange jacket here, again, the image would be about me and not about the atmosphere. And this is a little bit more different. If you talk about leading lines, there isn't a real leading line like a path in this image, but because I'm standing in a lane, you can see all those trees here on the left and the right, they pull your eye to the center. So there's not a real leading line, but because the darkness leads towards this bright part, the forest around it leads or is the leading line of the image. And it just works really nice, and you just know that the human eye goes to the brightest part, so that is the waterfall. And that's what I wanted to enhance by using this lane as a filler of the frame on the left and the right. But again, the rule of thirds or anything just doesn't apply to this image, absolutely not. But it's still a really, really nice image. And this is also a really strange image actually, because leading lines usually go towards where you want something to show. But in this case, all the lines in the image are going out of the frame. But even though that's the case, it just still works, you know. Because it's a really strange image. The subject is definitely this boat here in the front. Your eye, that's the first thing your eye goes to, because this boat is white. If this boat would have been a different color, like green or blue or red, it wouldn't have been in my eye as prominent as this white boat. So the only reason why this works is because of this white boat, and even though all the lines go out of the frame, I'm still looking at this white boat in the front here. And this is a real obvious natural way of using a leading line. So I use these grasses here to pull your eye to the left side here. So the sun is on this side, and I just try to use this line to make a natural flow towards that light on the left side, which works really nicely. But it doesn't particularly mean that everything in your foreground always is nice to act as a leading line. For example, in this case, where I try to use all those mosses as a foreground, and you can see that it gets way too busy, and there's some beautiful atmosphere going out in the back here. but you can't see it here in the foreground. Your eye keeps on this side of the image on the bottom, and you don't really look at the top of this frame. You can actually cut it off like this and make it a 3x2. Might even be a better image. But yeah, this is just not working. So this is not good for a foreground. And the same as for this, I just tried to use this flower, this bush towards the back here, but it just didn't work, you know. The leading line wasn't obvious enough, and because this is so bright, the only thing this image is about is this flower, and the rest, you don't look at it anymore. So you have to find a different way to do that. And for example, in this image, that worked way better. You know, you have these leading lines of the rocks leading towards this beautiful tree, and then this side light coming in with that little island. So the balance, and we will get to the balance part later, in combination with this leading lines, just works really well in this particular image. So these leading lines can be anything. They can be roads, they can be rocks, they can be all kinds of things, flowers, grasses, anything that is in a certain way leading to where you want it to go. And the most important is that think of yourself, what is the eye going to look at first in this image? And that's what you're going to try to find the leading lines to with your images. Well, this is another rule. People always tell you that this is a color wheel. If an image works well, it has a nice balance in colors. They always say that colors have to match each other on the opposite side. So for example, green works well with pink, orange works well with blue, yellow works with purple, and it's always the opposite side. So red and blue, these colors seem to match. For example, in this case, it's yellow and green. Well, you can say those are on both this side of the image, but it just still works because the balance is just really, really nice. There's nothing strange going on in this image, nothing on the edges. Everything is well balanced within this image. And it's the same for this image. Green and yellow, if we go back, are on the same side of the color wheel here. But there's only greens and yellows in this image, but still the image just works really well. It's maybe a little bit bluish here, that water. So blue, green, yellow, it's all on one side of this color wheel. But still those colors just work really nicely together. Same for this image. It's actually the same lake in Austria, blue, green, yellow. Always a nice color combination, in my opinion. And the image just works really well, even without a real subject. So there's no subject in here. But because the balance is just really nice, it works. So you have this, if you look at this image, it's actually completely wrong. So I have no rule of thirds because it's split completely through half. We have no good color combinations actually. And yeah, the only thing this image works for is atmosphere and balance. So that's something I'm always looking for in my images. The same here, yellow and black always work good in autumn images. That's something I'm always looking for, and black isn't even in the color wheel if we go back here. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. Yellow is just a really good color to match in landscape photography. And another great example here, I wanted the viewer to look at this little church here, and because it's just this church in the light here, you just look at it and everything around it comes after it. So the first thing you look at in this image is this church, and then you see all these beautiful layers and all these beautiful trees, and also these colors. They work really well together, and you can see it's green and magenta and maybe a little bit of blue orange. And if you see, these colors are all on one side of this color wheel. So it just works really, really well, even with different colors. And this also a nice autumn image, and that's why autumn images always work. You know, green, yellow, red, they are on opposite sides of that color wheel. So in this case, it's just a really good combination of these particular colors. And I liked the shape of this tree as a square image. So it's a balance with right colors that makes this image work. But balance, colors or leading lines, they are maybe really obvious, but they don't make every image. You know, sometimes there are no leading lines, but there are still nice images. I'm going to show you that in this section with images that I call the balance section. So these images don't have leading lines. They don't have real rule of third issues here. Matching colors also don't apply, but these images does work. And why is that? Because they breathe a certain atmosphere. And you can see it in this image, with this beautiful blue hour colors, some misty, hazy colors, and it just breathes that atmosphere that you need for a really good balanced shot. And it's the same for this image. You know, it's completely black and white, but why does it work? Because there are no disturbing elements around here on the edges of the frame. You know, the eye just catches the subject, and that's what you need to have with a balanced image. The eye just needs to know where to go in an image and don't look around, ooh, that's distracting or that's distracting. Now, balance is a very gentle way to look at images. This also, of course, the golden light is very, very beautiful, but the image works because of the balance. There's nothing around here that is disturbing. You know, everything is in here, and there's nothing that your eye can look at like, oh, that doesn't belong in this image. You know, this is perfectly balanced image. And it's actually a panorama of two images because I couldn't get it in one shot without having one of these bushes over the side of the image, which would have meant that I would have cloned one of these bushes out. But because I shot it as a small panorama of two images and then cropped it back to 16:9, I could include everything in this frame. And that's what I did in this case. It's the same for this image. It's just the balance. There's so much going on, so much light rays. But on the other hand, there's not much going on because there's nothing else in the image which pulls your attention. If there would have been a house or trees or stuff here in my foreground, then I would have possibly looked at that. But in this case, the image is all about the light rays on the sky here. And this is a little bit more difficult because there are some disturbing trees here on the left and some grasses in the foreground. But why does it work? Because the subject is so obvious. This section here with this tree exactly in the middle, it just works perfectly. And because it's like this, the first thing your eye looks at are those, I call these two the little monsters. And if you look at this Sunday's video, you will see I went back to this place in completely different conditions. So I also visited these little monsters again, but totally different conditions and a lot more snow. So keep your eye out this Sunday. The same for this image. There's just a nice balance of this image because these trees get smaller to the left side, and there isn't a real subject. You know, there's a bright light source here in the center which your eye pulls at, but it's about these trees and everything around it. There's more in the image, but it supports the rest of the image because you can see this as a leading line towards this big tree, and also this section here leads your eye towards the tree. The only thing I'm not so happy with is this little bush here on the left, which would have been better if it was out of this frame, but I just like that in this particular image. Also for this scene, you know, this is just a real beautiful image, beautiful colors. There's not much going on. It's a real simple image, but it just works because there's nothing disturbing here. It's all about this tree and the beautiful colors and nothing else going on. So you're not looking at this image and thinking, do I have to look over here or do I have to look over here? No, it's definitely very clear that this is my subject in the image. And that's the important thing with balance. This one also, there's a lot going on here. There's some fog, there is some trees here, beautiful light, the light source behind the trees here, but still the image works because it breathes this particular atmosphere that I'm always looking for in my images. In this case also, you know, there's some sort of rule that you don't have to put the horizon in the middle of the frame, but in this case it just worked perfectly. And why is that? Because this reflection was so beautiful and there's nothing in this image disturbing. It's just very clear what the subject is, beautiful light and those trees, reflection, and everything is just in balance. And the only thing that I always hear is about this rock. Some people say you should clone this rock out, but I just don't feel like it. This rock is there and I just like it somehow. Yeah, even though it's disturbing by reflection here and just having some balance. And indeed, some people say my eye gets pulled towards this rock. Yeah, it can be, but I'm not disturbed by it myself. This also, it's all about this house. These towers are maybe a little bit too high, but the balance of this image, the atmosphere that it breeds, it just works. And that's what I'm always looking for, atmosphere, balance, which are way more important to me than the rules that some other photographers always apply to. So see them as guidelines, once again, really important. This one is from last Sunday. I'll put a link up to the video up here if you haven't seen it yet. One of my favorite images from this year. Absolute amazing shot. And it just works because of the balance. And I took a couple of different compositions here, which you can see if you watch the video that I just put up here. And you can see that one composition works better than the other one. And this is the last image in the series. And you can see that why it worked was because, yeah, I don't even know why it works, but the balance of the image is way better. And you can see the other two images in that video. And you can see that it's very important to where you position these things in your image. I think the first one, the trees were more diagonal going to the frame, and this one was more vertical. So that's why I really preferred this particular image. And here also, yeah, it's all about this balance here. You know, there's no leading line or anything in this image, but it does work because of the atmosphere that it's breathing. And there's nothing distracting. Your eye just knows I have to look at this beautiful tree here and this section. It's just one really obvious shot of what to look for. And this is actually a bit of a strange image to me because I shot this pretty recently. I'll put a link up to this video. There were some epic conditions on that morning. And I love this image and there's nothing disturbing. Everything here is in frame. You know, this isn't over the edge halfway or nothing in the foreground disturbing. There's no trees or anything on the half of on this side. So the edges of this frame are just really nice. You have these leading lines going towards the tree, this leading line going here. These lines, particular way, go towards this tree. And it's just really nice. So everything comes together in this image. Atmosphere, leading lines, balance, the colors are all matching each other. So this is a really nice image. But the only thing that I missed, if I would have gone 1 meter to the right, then this bush here would have been separated from this tree and from this one. So it would have been a little bit more to the right side. And it would have made the image just that tiny bit better. And I actually noticed it on location and I thought I'm going to shoot this image again going 1 meter to the right, but this enormous fog cloud rolled in and this whole scene was gone within a minute after I shot this image. So this was just a 1 minute opportunity where I shot this and then it was gone. And because of that feeling, having this image and knowing that it was gone seconds later, yeah, it's just an amazing feeling to have an image like that. But it could have been just a little bit better if I paid a little bit more attention on location. And this is also an example about balance not always working. You know, if you look at this image, this bush is actually in the wrong spot. It should have been more over here to have a good balance. But the only thing that I was looking for was if these trees were all separated from each other. So I could have gone a little bit to the left, which would meant that this bush would automatically go a little bit more in this section, but then this bush would be behind this one. So it's always a compromise. And of course, I can also say I can crop this image and make it like this. I think they both have their own right of existence, but they are totally different images. But the atmosphere in this image is totally different than the one in this image. And you can see that it's not all about the balance and where something is positioned. It's far more about atmosphere and having that good feeling about an image. Yeah, I think that's it for me. You know, it has to be a feeling that you're having with your image, a sort of connection that you're immediately thinking about. Oh, that makes it nice. So forget about those rules. Think about them as guidelines. So the next time you can think, how can I use these guidelines in the field? And if they don't apply, they don't apply. And there are still nice images to shoot without following them. And always the most important thing when you're out there is that you like the image. You have to like the image, and if everyone else likes it, that's all okay, that's very nice. But the most important is that you like the image, because if you stop enjoying photography, then what's the use of going out there? So that's something to keep in mind. So I hope you've enjoyed these images and those little guidelines on composition. And yeah, I hope to see you this Sunday. I have a lot of compositional images in the next video. Yeah, from Belgium. So I'm going back to Belgium, some great snowy conditions this Sunday, and I just hope to see you then. If you like this video, don't forget, push that thumbs up button, and there's a subscribe button underneath this video, somewhere here or here, I don't know. If you push it, and there's also a subscribe notification bell. So if you push that little bell, you get a little menu. If you select all, it's all for free. You will get a message when I release my next video. So it's always on Thursdays and Sundays. So hope to see you then, and for now, bye bye.